Charles Lucky Luciano. The name is synonymous with the birth of modern organized crime in America. A visionary, a reformer, and a ruthless criminal mastermind. Luciano transformed the Mafia from a loosely connected network of warring gangs into a streamlined and profitable and brutally efficient criminal empire. In this episode, we'll take a deeper dive into the life and legacy of Lucky Luciano, exploring his humble beginnings as a Sicilian immigrant in the streets of New York, to his meteoric rise to power in the world of organized crime, and his lasting impact on the American underworld. We'll examine the key events and the relationships that shaped Luciano's criminal career, from his early days as a teenage hustler to his role in the formation of the infamous Commission that brought order to the chaos of the Mafia. We'll also explore Luciano's innovative criminal strategies, including his pioneer work in the fields of prostitution, drug trafficking, and labor racketeering. But we'll also look into the darker aspects of Luciano's legacy, including his involvement in the brutal Night of the Sicilian Vespers and his role in the rise of the heroin trade in post-World War II America. And we'll examine the controversial circumstances surrounding Luciano's eventual deportation back to Italy and his mysterious death in Naples in 1962. So join us as we journey into the heart of American Mafia and explore the life and times of the man who changed organized crime forever. This is the story of Charles Lucky Luciano. Warning: the following video is meant for educational purposes only and should not be taken otherwise. Apex Crime Lords does not condone, encourage, or glorify the actions of the individuals covered in this program. Viewer discretion is advised. Keep watching until the end to see what's next on Apex Crime Lords. The father of modern organized crime. Charles Luciano was born Salvatore Luciana on November 24, 1897, in the small Sicilian town of La Carafridi, the third of 5 children born to Antonio and Rosalia Luciana. Young Salvatore grew up in a world of poverty and hardship, where the Mafia was a fact of life and violence was a means of survival. In 1907, at the age of 9, Salvatore and his family immigrated to the United States, settling in the Lower East Side of Manhattan. It was a tough neighborhood, a melting pot of Jewish, Italian, and Irish immigrants, all struggling to make their way in a new and often hostile country. As a teenager, Salvatore quickly fell in with the local street gangs, running errands for older criminals and learning the ways of the underworld. He was a natural hustler, with a quick wit and a charming smile that cleverly hid his toughness and ambition. It was during this time that he acquired the nickname Lucky, a moniker that would stick with him for the rest of his life. In his early 20s, Luciano graduated from petty crime to more serious offenses. Working as a gunman and an enforcer for the powerful Mafia crime family, he quickly earned a reputation as a ruthless and efficient operator, willing to do whatever it took to get ahead in the cutthroat world of the Mafia. But Luciano was also a visionary, with a keen understanding of the changing nature of organized crime in America. He saw that the old ways of the Mafia, the strict codes of honor, the elaborate rituals, the bloody vendettas, were becoming increasingly obsolete in a modern industrialized society. He believed that the future of the Mafia was in organization, cooperation, and a business-like approach to crime. In 1929, Luciano took a major step towards realizing this vision when he allied himself with a rising star in the New York underworld named Meyer Lansky, a Polish Jew with a brilliant criminal mind. Lansky shared Luciano's belief in the power of organization and cooperation. Together, they began to lay the groundwork for a new kind of criminal enterprise, one that would transcend ethnic and territorial boundaries and operate on a national scale. But first, Luciano would have to navigate the treacherous waters of Mafia politics and survive a brutal power struggle that would leave scores of bodies in its wake. The stage was set for a bloody show then that would change the face of organized crime in America forever. In the early 1930s, the New York underworld was in a state of chaos. The city's Mafia families were engaged in a vicious power struggle, with rival bosses vying for control of the lucrative bootlegging and gambling rackets. At the center of this conflict were 2 powerful Mafia leaders, Joe the Boss Masiera and Salvatore Maranzano. Lucky Luciano, who'd risen through the ranks of the Masiera family, found himself caught in the middle of this bloody feud. He knew that the constant fighting was bad for business, and he believed that the only way forward was to bring the warring factions together under a single unified leadership. To achieve this goal, Luciano made a bold and ruthless move. In 1931, he secretly allied himself with Maranzano and helped orchestrate the assassination of his own boss, Joe Masseria. The hit, which took place in a Coney Island restaurant, was a shocking display of Luciano's cunning and ambition, and it sent shockwaves through the underworld. With Masseria out of the way, Maranzano declared himself the boss of all bosses and set about consolidating his power. But Luciano had other plans. Together with his allies, including Meyer Lansky and Bugsy Siegel, he plotted to eliminate Maranzano and take control of the Mafia himself. In September of 1931, Luciano's men gunned down Maranzano in his Park Avenue office, effectively ending the Castellamarese War and ushering in a new era of organized crime in America. With his rivals eliminated, Luciano was now the undisputed king of the underworld, and he wasted no time in putting his vision into action. Luciano's first order of business was to bring the various Mafia families together under a single governing body known as the Commission, made up of the bosses of the 5 major New York families, as well as representatives from other cities. The Commission was designed to prevent the kind of bloody turf wars that had plagued the Mafia in the past. Under Luciano's leadership, the Commission established clear territories for each family, set up rules for the resolutions of disputes, and coordinated criminal activities on a national scale. It was a revolutionary approach to organized crime, and it would serve as the model for Mafia organizations around the world for decades to come. But Luciano's influence extended far beyond the Mafia. He also forged alliances with other criminal groups, including Jewish and Irish gangs, and he expanded his operations into new and lucrative areas, such as prostitution, drug trafficking, and labor racketeering. Luciano's control over the New York waterfront was particularly impressive, allowing him to extort millions of dollars from shipping companies and control the flow of illegal goods into the city. He also established a network of brothels and casinos that catered to the wealthy and powerful, further cementing his influence and power. By the mid-1930s, Lucky Luciano was at the height of his power, a criminal mastermind with a vast empire at his command. But even as he enjoyed the fruits of his success, storm clouds were gathering on the horizon. Law enforcement was beginning to take notice of his activities, and a special prosecutor named Thomas Dewey was determined to bring him down. The stage was set for an epic confrontation between the forces of law and order and the most powerful gangster in America. As Lucky Luciano's criminal empire grew, so did the attention of law enforcement. In 1935, New York prosecutor Thomas Dewey launched an investigation into Luciano's prostitution rackets, determined to bring the powerful gangster to justice. But Luciano was not an easy target. He had spent years cultivating a network of corrupt politicians and police officers, and he had a team of skilled lawyers who knew how to navigate the legal system. He also had a knack for staying one step ahead of his pursuers, always seeming to know when trouble was coming. But Dewey was persistent and slowly began to build a case against Luciano and his associates. In 1936, he secured the testimony of several key witnesses, including a group of prostitutes who had worked for Luciano's organization. Their damning testimony, combined with other evidence gathered by Dewey's team, was enough to convince a grand jury to indict Luciano on charges of compulsory prostitution. However, Luciano remained defiant. He used his vast resources to mount a vigorous defense, hiring the best lawyers money could buy, and using his influence to intimidate potential witnesses. He even went so far as to offer Dewey a $50,000 bribe to drop the case, a move that only served to strengthen the prosecutor's determination. In the end, Dewey's case was too strong to overcome. In 1936, Luciano was convicted on 62 counts of compulsory prostitution and sentenced to 30 to 50 years in prison. It was a stunning blow to the underworld, and a testament to the power of the law to bring even the most powerful criminals to justice. But even behind bars, Luciano remained a force to be reckoned with. He continued to run his criminal empire from his prison cell, using a network of trusted associates to carry out his orders. He also used his influence to improve his own conditions, securing special privileges, and even arranging for his own private kitchen and staff. During World War II, Luciano even managed to turn his imprisonment into his advantage. In 1942, he struck a deal with the US government, agreeing to use his connections in Sicily to help the Allied invasion of Italy in exchange for a reduced sentence. Luciano's contacts were invaluable, and he was eventually rewarded with a reduction of his sentence and deportation to Italy in 1946. But even in exile, Luciano remained a powerful figure in the underworld. He continued to oversee his criminal operations from afar, and he used his wealth and influence to live a life of luxury in Naples. He also maintained close ties with his old allies in the United States, including Meyer Lansky and Frank Costello, who informed him of developments in the American Mafia. Despite his success, however, Luciano's life in Italy was not without its challenges. He faced constant scrutiny from the Italian authorities, who were determined to prevent him from rebuilding his criminal empire on Italian soil. He also struggled with health problems, including heart disease and high blood pressure, which would eventually take his life in 1962 at the age of 64. But even in death, Lucky Luciano's legacy loomed large over the underworld. He had transformed the Mafia from a collection of warring gangs into a powerful and efficient criminal enterprise, and his influence would be felt for generations to come. For better or worse, Luciano had changed the face of organized crime forever, and his story remains one of the most fascinating and enduring in the history of American crime. For Lucky Luciano, the fall from power was a gradual one, marked by a series of setbacks and challenges that slowly eroded his influence and control over the underworld. The first blow came with his conviction and imprisonment in 1936, which removed him from direct control over his criminal empire. While he was able to continue to oversee his operations from behind bars, the distance and isolation made it difficult for him to maintain the same level of authority and control. Luciano's deportation to Italy in 1946 was another setback, one that effectively cut him off from his power base in the United States. While he was able to maintain some level of influence through his connections with American mobsters, like Lansky and Costello, he was no longer the undisputed king of the underworld. But perhaps the biggest challenge to Luciano's power came from within the Mafia itself. In the years following World War II, a new generation of mobsters began to rise through the ranks. Men who had little loyalty to Luciano and who saw him as a relic of a bygone era. One of these men was Vito Genovese, a former Luciano lieutenant who had ambitions of his own. In 1957, Genovese staged a coup against Frank Costello, Luciano's hand-picked successor as head of the Luciano crime family. When the coup ultimately failed, it was a clear sign that Luciano's grip on power was slipping. Luciano's health also began to fail him in his later years. He suffered from heart disease and high blood pressure, and he became increasingly reliant on medications to manage his conditions. His declining health made it difficult for him to maintain the same level of control and influence that he had enjoyed in his prime. Despite these challenges, Luciano remained a powerful and respected figure in the underworld until his death in 1962. His legacy as the father of modern organized crime was secure, and his influence would continue to be felt for generations to come. But Luciano's story is also a cautionary tale about the fleeting nature of power in the criminal underworld. No matter how powerful or influential a mobster may become, there will always be others waiting in the wings to take their place. And as Luciano himself learned, even the most successful criminal empires can be brought down by the forces of law and order, or by the changing tides of history. In the end, Lucky Luciano's life and career serve as a fascinating window into the world of organized crime in America. His story is one of ambition, violence, and ruthless efficiency, but it's also a story of the human capacity for adaptation and survival in the face of adversity. Luciano may have been a criminal, but he was also a visionary and an innovator, a man who changed the face of the underworld forever. The story of Lucky Luciano is a complex and fascinating one, full of contradictions and larger-than-life personalities. On one level, it's the story of a poor Sicilian immigrant who rose to become one of the most powerful and influential gangsters in American history, a man who transformed the Mafia from a loosely organized collection of warring gangs into a streamlined and efficient criminal enterprise. But Luciano's story is also a deeper meditation on the nature of power and the human condition. Through his rise and fall, we see the ways in which ambition, greed, and the lust for control can drive individuals to incredible heights, but also lead them to ruin and despair. At its core, the story of Lucky Luciano is a quintessentially American one. It's the tale of reinvention and self-creation, of a man who arrived in America with nothing, and through sheer force of will and cunning, managed to create an empire for himself. In this sense, Luciano's story echoes that of countless other immigrants who have come to this country in search of a better life, only to find themselves caught up in the darker currents of American society. But Luciano's legacy is also a troubling one, marked by violence, exploitation, and human suffering. His criminal empire was built on the backs of countless victims, from the women forced into prostitution to the workers extorted and terrorized by his labor rackets. And his influence on American organized crime would have profound and lasting consequences, paving the way for decades of corruption, violence, and social decay. As we reflect on the life and times of Lucky Luciano, it's important to approach his story with a critical and nuanced eye. While his accomplishments as a criminal mastermind are undeniable, we must also grapple with the moral and ethical implications of his actions, and the ways in which his legacy continues to shape our understanding of crime and justice in America. At the same time, we must also recognize the ways in which Luciano's story speaks to larger themes and issues in American society. His rise from poverty to power is a testament to the enduring appeal of the American dream, even of its darkest and most twisted forms. Ultimately, the story of Lucky Luciano is one that raises more question than answers. It's a story that challenges us to confront the darker aspects of our history and culture, and to grapple with the complex and often contradictory forces that shape our world. But it's also a story that reminds us of the enduring power of the human spirit, and the ways in which the most unlikely of individuals can rise to greatness, for better or worse. In the end, Lucky Luciano's legacy is one that will continue to fascinate and confound us for generations to come, a testament to the enduring allure of the American underworld and the men and women who have shaped its course. Thank you for tuning in and looking into one of the most infamous underworld figures of our time. If you found it illuminating, be sure to like this video and subscribe to Apex Crime Lords for more unvarnished portraits of mobsters, killers, and kingpins who have left their bloody mark on history. Until next time, stay safe and stay dangerous. Up next, we'll go to the streets of Medellin, to the heights of the international drug trade, and look at one woman's ruthless ambition and cunning that would earn her the title the godmother of cocaine. Join us for the story of Griselda Blanco, the Colombian queenpin who revolutionized the drug game and left a trail of blood and destruction in her wake. We'll look at the shocking rise and fall of one of the most notorious figures in the history of organized crime. It's a gripping tale of power, violence, and the high price of success in the brutal world of trafficking narcotics. Be sure to watch our next episode, Griselda Blanco, the Black Widow of Cocaine.